for the Book Mavens. I'm Rachel. This is Amanda. So we are doing our first episode with the wheel. So we had chosen in the previous video 3 books to read by spinning the wheel since we were exhausted from trying to choose. So we decided to put our choice in the hands of fate. There we go. Out of 20 books. And the first book that we chose was N.K. Jemisin's 5th season. So I started the book before Amanda got there, and I had to send some text to Amanda about it. I only made it through the first 25 digital pages of the 5th season. There are reasons, and I think that this was a valid point to start talking about perhaps why people made DNF a book. Beyond it just being, I just wasn't hooked. This just doesn't strike my interest. It's kind of surface level things. And to talk about some things that are just kind of lines drawn, like hard lines for people in terms of books. And I know I've seen other people talk about, it depends on how they handle really sensitive subjects like race or diversity, how they may talk about characters who are different than that kind of heteronormative cisgender way, where they may draw some lines in terms of just lack of diversity that way. And rape is another big trigger for a lot of people. And I have realized reading N.K. Jemisin's 5th season that in the first 20-25 pages, she uses a different narrative that we're used to, which is fine. It's a second person narrative, which is very different. And if you didn't know that. So,
well, I didn't.
Yeah.
We decided not to do it. And so I moved into our next book.
That's right. And, which I was really excited about because it was so different. And she brings up a character of a mother who loses a child through extreme violence, and her just sitting in the home with this child with a blanket over this 3-year-old baby, her baby, and mourning for 3 days. And I had to stop. I don't, as we know, we've talked about this, DNFing is not something I'm always super comfortable doing. It takes a lot for me to DNF a book, and I had to stop. That I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about perhaps other reasons why people might DNF. That it's personal. I have never lost a child. It's not on that level of personal, but I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old. So anything where we're talking about it in a very, almost uses a very kind of stark language in which to talk about this, and kind of this kind of far away view of this mother's grief. But the way she wrote it, and this is props to her writing ability, just was like a knife to my heart. And I just I'm not in a place in my life right now to be able to process that level of grief on that level. And so I had to stop. And so I texted Amanda and I said, I'm just not there. Maybe in several years when my children aren't in that age range, perhaps I can read it and enjoy it. But I was concerned with this level of grief happening in the first 20 pages, that this element of the book was going to be a major element throughout the story. And I just don't think it would be something that I could just kind of grit my teeth and get through, and it would be done in a few pages and to be able to move on. That would be really tough. And I mentioned this book to some of my students who I know read a lot of science fiction and fantasy. And I had a student who had read it, and he was telling me just how good it was. You just need to power through. And I said, boo-boo. I really cannot. That's too emotionally draining. So we talk about like mental health and how books can sometimes make us feel. That didn't put me in a good place. And so I just didn't think at this point in time that it would be worth continuing.
Mm-hmm. And I support that because I mean, everyone knows everyone's having a hard time right now, especially public schools. I just don't have the emotional bandwidth sometimes to go on the journey that a book wants to take me on. Not because it's not a wonderful book or not because it's not a journey worth taking. It's just you have to decide what you have the capacity for in the moment. Not every book is right for you in every moment of your life. Some books become powerful because of when you read them. And you have to choose, sometimes you have to choose wisely, and you have to choose yourself. So we are just going to put that one on a back shelf and perhaps revisit it. I may revisit it earlier than Rachel. Different circumstance. It's kind of a just we'll see. So we took the DNFing very seriously on that one because we were excited, and it was an author that we think has a lot to offer. It is a very unique writing style, but maybe this one of her books is not the one for us to try. So
yeah, I bought The City We Became, and that looks really interesting. So I might pick that one up. And I mean, there were elements in those first 20 to 25 pages, like some kid like cracking out of a geode and is eating crystals. Super great, but then they went right back into this other narrative, and I just couldn't, if that was going to be a continuous stream of the book, that was just, for me, that hits too close to home. And sometimes it's just, you have to do things that make you, I don't know what the right word is for that, but just to not spiral down into something, because that's my greatest fear, anything like that happening to my children. And that's like, I like fantasy and I like science fiction because it talks about, real life issues and relationships with people and character development that is done in such a unlimited kind of way, and that's what draws me to those genres. And that was that was a lot. And I can handle violence. It's just something about the way that she wrote that, it was just too personal.
So we decided to move into our second wheel spin instead, and we went ahead and read the other book, the second one, which was
A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. And I do like this one because I remember when this came out, because Alex Harrow is somewhat of a hot author right now. So she has 3 books out right now: The Once and Future Witches and The 10,000 Doors of January. And I'm about halfway through The 10,000 Doors of January, and I'm really liking it. I like her writing style, and they're different tones, this one and the other one. But I remember this was really big for pre-order. and a lot of booktubers being super excited because you tend to only see this part of the book and not this part of the book. And the price, because this was $17.99 US dollars, that this was they were a little shocked by the size.
Yeah, it was a fast read.
It was a real fast read.
I was going to say, it did not take me very long.
Yeah. But I really love fairy tale retellings, and this was such a unique way to do it and to add this kind of realism to it, but not, I liked it. It's a different tone. Yeah.
It's around the retelling of Sleeping Beauty, which if you don't know the story, many people correctly have some trouble with that Disney movie because the whole, the title character is not actually in it very much. Most of the movie is not about her.
She sings an awesome song, though.
She does sing probably
Once
one of my
Dream
Once Upon a Dream is like one of my
favorite.
top songs. Listen, she's memorable in those few moments that she's in there. But I think even this book quoted, I think she has 18 lines in that whole movie or something like that, aside from the song. But anyway, so
there's
it's
a lot of action happening around her.
It's a
She's
retelling
not the
of Sleeping Beauty.
But it's not just the Disney one. They're going all the way back to
Like
all
the folklore,
versions,
which I really liked. And I thought she hooked that in such a clever way. Okay, so this is the point where if you're going to read it, we might get a little bit, it's so short, it's almost impossible to not get a little bit spoilery and talk about it. So if you want to read this, just pause. We'll be here in a few hours when you finish. The way she lures you in by making, it her childhood obsession that she decides to study folklore in college and get her kind of an anthropology folklore degree was such a unique way to work in all of her research on the original story. When I started reading it, I actually thought I had to pause because I thought I was reading the foreword, which was so clever. And then I was in the story before I even realized it. It was very cleverly the hook was very, very clever, and then the backstory to get you to where you were was very, very well done. Very believably done for me. This like childhood obsession becomes, your lifelong thing that you study. But yeah,
I would take that major in a heartbeat.
I bet you would, and I would not. I would have still been over in my analytical history, economics.
I do a lot of. I know quite a few folklore stories. I've definitely done a deep dive. I remember being bummed going to college. There was a class about folklore, and I just couldn't wedge it into my schedule. Like, I had no other credits I needed that would have fulfilled, and that was a real bummer. Well, your protagonist, I think it's important because that is on the back. Yeah, inside. That our narrator, which is it's a first person perspective, that she's terminally ill. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of her reflections on Sleeping Beauty is talking about this idea of sleeping and then being able to wake up. And it's really about her processing an imminent death. Mm-hmm. And
such a unique parallel drawn, and that she continuously drew on, but not in a way that made me feel like she was overdoing it. Because sometimes with books that deal with like terminal illness, they're just like really laying on like certain tropes, and this one did not feel that way to me. It felt authentic each time.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I mean, it was short, so there weren't that many times, but.
It is really short. But to be honest, Sleeping Beauty isn't a long fairy tale.
True.
It's not something that, it's not a tome by any stretch of the imagination, the original one. But if you go back to the very original Sleeping Beauty, this shouldn't be a spoiler. All right.
It will be, because who knows? No. Okay. It will be, Rachel, because people do not know this story.
Well, let me fill you in on Sleeping Beauty. The original story is not as beautiful as Disney's
as
version.
All fairy tales, really. If you go to the original, I don't know what Disney was looking at, because that is not how that story went.
So I'm all right with that, because I would never want to see the original Sleeping Beauty on screen. Okay. So yeah, you have little Briar Rose. She goes by a different name. I forget the actual name. Briar Rose is the common one. Yeah, something with a Z. They're all flower names. Anyway,
Delia or something.
I don't know. It's not that important. Anyway, so we have our damsel, and she gets it, and it's not a spindle. It's like a piece of flax that gets jammed into her finger, and she goes into this sleep. And meanwhile, a prince comes by, so they didn't even go into this level of detail in the actual book.
I know. Well, listen, it's heavily insinuated between the lines. I got it. I got it.
And he comes by and just casually visits her and rapes her. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's rape. I mean, he comes back and visits her continuously. She gets pregnant with twins, gives birth while sleeping, and her twins just crawl all over her and do whatever, and then one sucks her on her finger and sucks the piece of flax out from her finger, and that's when she awakens. Meanwhile, Princey Pooh,
yuck,
comes back, but he's already married to an ogress. So they don't go into all of this. Like, it's like a whole thing. And he takes her back and tries to hide her. Meanwhile, the ogress finds out about it and tries to kill them. And then, there's like a whole thing. And anyway, they end up killing the ogress, and then she becomes queen, and everyth's A-okay.
I want us to take this whole story and file it firmly in the column of Amanda does not like that.
Who would? It's a terrible story. It is really bad.
It's like, honestly, even listening to you tell it is like turning my stomach. Oh,
it is.
Which is like, yucky. But the villain in this is that part was my favorite part. I've been giving it considerable thought. They go to find the bad fairy who cursed her, and they discover that she's not actually the bad fairy. That she
used to be a Sleeping Beauty as well. So all of this book is talking about
herself magic.
Yes, talking about parallels among all of these stories about these women without choice. And so it aligns this way, and that they're all just kind of, it gets a little science fiction-y a little bit.
That's the part I was trying to figure out if I believed or not. Moment. There's a moment where there's like some cross-parallel realities overlapping and like multiple character.
It's very interesting, and to be done.
It's unique.
in such a short book.
Yeah.
I think she was pretty successful at it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you're really supposed to deep dive into the hows of how,
and it's definitely
how it happens.
Although, let me say this, she wrote
it's a fairy tale.
It's written as a one-off, but she did give herself an opening if she wanted to ever develop it into something more.
I hope she doesn't. I like it that it's open.
It's considering how short it is, it's pretty masterfully done.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty darn good. I would recommend it to people.
Yeah, I mean
it's pretty quick.
It's talking about these girls, these women, these young women, not willing to take the narrative they've been given and snatching their choice back and helping each other find that.
A lot
choice.
of women helping women.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and the ladies helping other ladies instead of bringing each other down. I'm all for that narrative. But let's just talk about the book itself because it's a beautiful cover.
It is a beautiful book.
And if you look inside, they have all of these beautiful.
There's a lot of art in between, like on the page,
like some classic, like some
it's
grim
quite
level,
lovely.
Illustrations in here that are just really interesting as you're reading through to see it. So,
so I have to say, like,
how beautiful is
as
that?
a critique of, I understand if you thought you were getting a full length book and that's what came, I'd have been upset too.
It's
but
still beautiful.
It's a quality book. It's beautifully illustrated.
Beautiful.
It's beautifully bound. It's a lovely book. I mean, I totally see, though, if that's not what you're expecting.
You might see maybe if she comes on sale at some point in time, but it is really pretty and has that soft velvet where you want to like rub it on your face.
Oh, yeah, that's Rachel's. As
I
we've
do.
learned, that's Rachel's market with quality book. How much do I want to rub my face on it?
That's right. It passes the rub face test.
Oh my gosh.
So I would recommend this. If you don't want to pick it up, that's fine. Maybe borrow it from your library if it becomes available.
Yeah, great library checkout.
Yeah. But it's totally worth it. It's worth
because it will not take you long. It's a nice escape book.
Yeah.
If you need to escape for just like if you've got one night, you're not really ready to go on like a full scale novel adventure. What a great novella for an evening. That would be a great evening.
You could curl up with a nice cup of tea and some cookies and knock this out. You have an evening alone. Do it. It's really good. It'll make you think. I had some introspective moments. Next time, join us. We'll be talking about our next spin, which was Miss Lattimore's Letter. And which is a really fun one, especially since we're just coming off Austen. It's a little throwback, had some Austinian qualities to it. So make sure you tune back in with us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Miss Lattimore's Lover. I keep wanting to say lover. It's not lover.
that kind of book.
Letter.